This past September, I've been in the South a lot. We've been trying to figure out whether it's worth it to harvest the olive trees this year. The month of October has a lot of significance for me.
October 3rd.
And not just because it's when my youngest sister was born. There are other reasons. In Lebanon, over the past century, a lot of families moved to the flashy capital of Beirut from their mountain villages for work or education. The Daya is what you call those ancestral villages that your family comes from, even if you don't live there anymore. Even if you weren't born there, your family tree still has roots there, and so you do too. When someone asks Inta min wain, they're not asking where you were born. The Daya is the root they're asking for. My dad's village, the only one I have since my mom's American, is on Lebanon's southern border with occupied Palestine. It used to be part of the occupied territory in southern Lebanon up until May of 2000 when the Israeli troops slithered back across the border. This is my grandparents' house, built 50 years ago. I first visited in 1992 when I was just 4 years old. We had to go through Israeli checkpoints to be allowed in. Everything here is connected to my grandmother. But ever since she passed away on this very couch in late October of 2018, I feel like the parts of her that are still here are fading away too. During her funeral, I sought refuge in the grove outside the house, and it was the first time I really looked at the fruit that were already turning purple by then. Olives and olive oil were never something I bought at a store. They were in endless supply, but I never thought about how they got to the table. The trees were just there. They were a part of the house, like the yellow stone from Arsel. The next October in 2019, we were revolting in the city square. Olives were a distant memory. But by October 2020, after the protests failed and the pandemic began and the lira collapsed and the city exploded, well, I sought refuge in the groves again. Nature just didn't care. The fruit was there, all you had to do was pick it. Olive trees alternate in yield, and unlike everything else, 2020 was a good zaytun year in Lebanon. So now, to me, October means zaytun. The following years, one good and one bad, I was abroad. But now I'm here, and it seems like the olives aren't.
في هو
خلصنا؟
خلصنا هيدا لا في بعد تعال شوف.
So right there is the border between Lebanon and Palestine. Well, occupied Palestine. So far, this plot seems to be the healthiest as far as actual yield. We still do have a few trees, though, that are pretty sparse. But I mean, look at this guy. Look at this guy. Like a lot of our vineyards, Lebanon's olive trees are dry farmed, meaning we don't irrigate. But because of the heat waves across the Mediterranean, this bad year seems even worse. I was reading House of Stone by the late Anthony Shadid during my weekends here. It's a memoir about the period he spent in the South renovating his ancestral home in the neighboring town of Marjayoun. It covers a lot of the local history and quirks of the area, which isn't something I've ever seen in English print. It's like reading a cousin's diary, and I wish he were still around so I could ask him about his 2 olive trees and if he's going to wait for the rain this year. In the book he writes, the house was still a remnant of another time, an artifact in a way. But sitting here, after an impetuously early harvest, I felt a simple connection, even if it was merely picking olive trees that belonged to the past. We'll be back next week after the rain to see what the trees will give us.